For 40 years, Bob O'Neill worked restoring films and preserving them for Universal Studios. He now lives in Prescott. Here's some of the films that he worked on, just real fast. Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. And this was from 1954. I've seen it, a tremendous film. 1960's Psycho. Who has not seen Psycho? Scares me to death. You can hardly shower anymore after Psycho. All Quiet on the Western Front. This was from 1930. 1931's Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi, scariest man in movies. The Bride of Frankenstein, 1935. And very famous 1962, To Kill a Mockingbird, which most of us have read and seen the movie. So phenomenal. Bob O'Neill, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
What a terribly fun, career you've had. I have to say, I love movies. As we were talking, I see a lot of movies,
Yeah.
a couple a week and that kind of thing. But what does it mean to preserve and restore old films?
There's two sides of it. I was in the film analog world. Today, all those movies that you mentioned, when you see them on the air, they've all been digitally restored, which is absolutely
But there's a very
gorgeous.
difference.
There is a
in
difference
those.
as far as cleanliness. You can tell when you look at a digital restoration because it looks perfect. Analog film, it's not quite as easy. The idea is that when a movie is made, you want to preserve it for future use, distribution use for people to see it.
Because what happens if you don't preserve these films? What happens to those? Because now I remember my dad took 8mm films when we were kids, very little, but everything was on celluloid.
Yes, on celluloid or cellulose nitrate. Back pre-1949, when the film was very explosive, it could catch on fire. It was a whole nother era. That was one of our
And you're
challenges.
showing a light through it that gets really
Yeah,
hot too.
yeah.
So obviously, probably. In fact, I have to say, I remember some films where you're in there and then you see it goes whoop, and it's just like where they go. Go get popcorn. We'll have this back on in just a minute. So yeah, these were touchy as it were.
Yeah.
But is there a difference between preservation and restoration, or those kind of?
Yeah, no,
sisters?
preservation, like I say, is to preserve it for the future use.
Okay.
So it's always there in the vaults to use.
So that's the vision of
Yeah,
it.
okay. And that's both on picture and on sound.
Oh.
That you worry about that. It's not just picture, it's the whole
Because
thing.
is the sound embedded in the frames?
No,
or
it's
what?
separate.
No, it was
We'll show an
separate.
example later that I can show you a little bit more on that.
Okay.
But, so restoration can be one of two things. When you look at today, the digital restorations that you see, most of what you see on even the old movies that you see that are all beautiful, they've been restored. They've had the dirt taken out, the scratches taken out. Or a restoration can be if there was a movie that a director had made that was censored or cut down, and the director's vision never got to the silver screen.
Right.
What got there was the final cut. And the director sometimes feels put out that his version wasn't the one that was put on, so you end up with the Friday night movie, I'll call it. That goes on forever and ever.
Right.
If you're lucky, you can sometimes find a pure movie that you can do a full restoration, which is a different version.
Okay, now we see this again on our DVDs, that kind of a thing where you have options. You can play the movie and then you can see what the, different cuts, things that were cut out and stuff. So
Yeah.
this is, but you're talking analog. I mean, frame
Yeah.
by frame. So you
Yeah.
said you clean, you like clean them frame
The good
by
news is,
frame. What?
I don't do it. I issue the PO. The lab does it. I'm the guy that gets to take the credit, but they're the people that did all the work. So what they were doing is there's different techniques, photographic techniques that they've used to re-photograph that original film and make it look as good as they possibly can. And that, for instance, but get back on restoration for a second. Restoration, you may have 4 or 5 different pieces of film that you're using. You might, if you're lucky, find the old original version that they used as kind of an idea of what to do. You may have a script that you're working off of. You may have, just because of condition of the film, you use different pieces of film. The trick, though, is all those pieces of film, you've got to take and make them all look the same. Because when you start intercutting them together, you know, you've seen enough movies where it doesn't fit. The contrast is wrong, the density is wrong, whatever.
And it's jarring.
It's
when
jarring.
you see
Yeah,
something
and
like
you
that.
take the audience out of it. So the idea is to take that whole thing and make it look seamless.
Because some are broken, some are missing, some
Yeah.
are not legible,
Yeah.
I suppose, to restore.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I know with technology changing so much, I took my dad's old, you know, reels and reels of 8mm, and you'd be playing them, trying to, like, you know, and they would break, and then you got to splice them. And this is what the film restoration thing, what you were dealing with.
Yeah.
So first you clean it, then you put it together, you try to make it good. I mean, it's really technical.
Yeah, and
in
actually
terms of-
before that, you've got to look, if you look at the history of a movie that's made in 1930, you've made copies of that movie for distribution for different things over the years. So now when you want to do a restoration or a preservation, you go through all those copies and say, and you have to inspect every one of them on a frame by frame basis and say, okay, this one's broken here. Okay, if it's broken here, well then we're going to use this one over here to replace that. But you've got to do that inspection ahead of time.
How many
before you can do
frames are
anything.
there in like a 2-hour movie, let's say? Thousands?
Yeah, oh yeah, because
Like
it's...
how much a second?
Okay, 24 frames a second.
Woo!
Okay,
that's
times
gonna-
60.
How long? How long does it take to do something like that?
A long preservation can be 6 months.
Amazing. All right, we're with Bob O'Neill, and he is an expert on restoration and preservation of old films. Yay! And we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to see and hear some examples of what was done with this. And we're with Bob O'Neill. He is a restorationist, was a preservationist and restorationist for old films. It's great talking to you, Bob. This is so fascinating because otherwise, if these were not preserved and restored in the way that you're talking about, number one, they wouldn't be viewable, but we wouldn't even have these films. They would be like, oh gosh, too bad you couldn't see All Quiet on the Western Front, you know, but it's gone.
Well, and those movies are movies that a lot of people have worked at over the years. You've got institutions out there, Library of Congress, UCLA. There are people out there that spend a heck of a lot of money doing the same thing we do, trying to find different things. It's not a solo effort. It's totally a community effort.
Because you have to collect these from all different sources and then you know,
and you kind of share together.
Piece it together.
Yeah, if they've got something better, they'll let you use it.
So we have some examples of what difference it makes. So let's go with audio first.
Okay.
So because you said audio has to be restored separately and then your film. So
So what you're going to see here is an old pre-code movie. If you're a film buff, you know what pre-code is, which basically movies 1929 to 1933, 34. It was a point when the studios were allowed to kind of be naughty.
Oh.
Yes, and it lasted for a brief period, and it was really a lot of fun. If anybody gets a chance to watch pre-code movies, they should, because they're a lot of fun. So anyway, this movie that you're going to see, this first clip, it's going to be a before and after. That what you're seeing was made off of the nitrate original. That was the tool that we used. Unfortunately, the audio had water damage. And you're going to see the water damage on the left-hand side of the screen. You're going to see a bar that goes down, and there's horizontal lines, and it's going to run through, and you're going to see this damage go through. And then you're going to hear that. You're going to hear that damage. The actual damage. So when we did the original first run at preservation, or in this case it would have been restoration, we discovered this. So we had to find another source. And the source, another film source, and the film source we found was a 16mm track that should have been destroyed long ago. Luckily it wasn't, and we used that, digitized it, and then laid it over, replaced it. So before and after.
You clipped it in. All right, let's hear what it sounds like before when there's water damage and after when it's been fixed.
If there was anything serious between him and your daughter, I'd know it.
You mean they've been sweethearting all this time without him aiming to marry her?
That's exactly what I do mean. And if your girl Naomi wasn't such a fool, she'd know it too. If there was anything serious between him and your daughter, I'd know it.
You mean they've been sweethearting all this time without him aiming to marry her?
That's exactly what I do mean. And if your girl Naomi wasn't such a fool, she'd know it too.
And that's astounding because you could not even understand the first exchange.
No.
You know, I was leaning forward trying to listen. You really couldn't tell what they were saying.
And I don't know if you could, I couldn't hear it here. I don't know if they could hear it at home or not, but there's blood, where you saw those pieces
Yes.
going through, you could hear thud, 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 thud through that whole thing.
As it cycled through.
Yeah. Now, the next piece is going to be a piece of picture where the original negative was damaged, and we found another piece to replace it. Both of these, you could say, were subtle changes. Today in digital, they would do it much better. But it was still, you'll see the before and after. So this is total picture. The first piece will be off the original negative, the nitrate original negative, 1932. The next piece will be from a nitrate print that we found.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Again, meshing those together. All right, let's see what this looks like.
Missed a couple of seconds on the head end. Oh well.
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
subtle, like I say.
Yeah.
But it's stuff like that that you try to find something better that you can use to, you know, to replace it and look as good as
Yeah,
possible.
to make them clear and stuff. So does it? So it has to be. We're going to lose. We would lose these. There was we were talking about the movie Hugo, and they talked about one of the first guys who got those movies out. A lot of his films were destroyed.
Yeah.
But the ones that they were able to find, then you can save them for posterity. Just like I had to take, you know, our 8mm family films, and first you put them onto VHS, and then my gosh, you know.
Oh.
DVD came out, so then you have to change it again, and that's kind of, you were saying, analog to digital is gonna go. So absolutely fascinating, Bob. Just really fast, you did this for 40 years. Did you want to do this, or did it just kind of happen?
No, I've been in the business 48 years.
Yeah.
I was in special effects, optical special effects, and then I got into this, and it was nothing but one technology led into another, into another. So
Fascinating, and there you were.
Yeah.
Love films. You love films, don't you?
Yes, very much.
Yes, we do.
Very much.
This is a buff right here. Bob O'Neill, thanks so much for joining us today.
was
A
a
real
pleasure.
treat. I wish we had 2 hours, but hey, anyway, wonderful to have you
Thank
with
you.
us. Thanks. Don't you go away. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.